like it. You want a podcast like it? Podcast like it's 1999. Podcast like it. Just podcast like it. Podcast like it's 1999. Podcast like it. You want a podcast like it's 1999.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Like It's 1989, the podcast where we talk about the films of 1989 from a warp zone here in 2021. I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Neibart.
And I'm Phyllis Gove.
And I'm Tom Mison.
With us today, chiming in like a regular Bowser is Tom Mison.
Oh my God.
Just Koopa trooping his way into our podcast. But Tom, you are our first repeat guest on the 1989 Patreon, which is because you bring...
No one else was available.
No, kidding. It's because you bring the subscribers.
They're available.
You bring the money.
You bring the fans. But I would also say, too, this movie, which I've spoken to a couple people about over the past couple days, every time I say The Wizard, they're like, what's that? And then when I tell them what it is, they're like, oh my God, I loved that movie as a kid. Like, no one makes the association between the title and what it's about.
Weirdly, several people have asked me if that's the one with Fred Savage and the Big Blue Monster, which came out in the same year, didn't it?
Little Monsters, yeah.
Oh, Little Monsters, excellent movie.
I don't know why they thought that The Wizard was...
It's a more appropriate title for Little Monsters. The Wizard's a very bad title because one thing I don't think about with Nintendo lore and Mario lore is a wizard.
It just feels like this movie, he's referred to, and by he I mean Jimmy is referred to once as a wizard, I think, at one point.
A few times by Lucas, one of the great villains in film history. But I don't care that it's a bad title. It's a good film. Tom, why are
it really makes you think of Phil and I were texting when we were watching it, and we'd compared it to Tommy.
It is like Tommy.
It is the like Pinball Tommy. Wizard.
Yeah, it is. That's a good point.
I mean, I don't know if that was intentional, but if it was, it's stupid, and if it wasn't, that's also stupid.
Well, maybe that, I don't know. Maybe that was kind of a term. A video game term that was on its way out in the late 80s.
That feels right.
Because I did not know this, and I saw this movie in theaters, and this is the first movie I can remember demanding my dad take me to.
Really?
So Tom, you saw this as a kid as well, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, when we were talking about you coming on for this movie, you talked about how like we both felt the same way, which is I don't remember anything about it other than loving it. Really, like I remember the Power Glove, which is a big fucking deal as a kid, and I remember the beginning of my crush on Jenny Lewis. But short of that, I couldn't tell you anything about this film. Really?
Now, funnily enough, I only remember those two things.
Yeah,
and dinosaurs at the end. I have no recollection of anything why there were dinosaurs at the end. But anytime I see dinosaurs, I think, oh, there was a film.
And I don't remember dinosaurs at the end at all, to the point where it came to me as a complete surprise at the end. Whenever dinosaurs are referenced, I think of Pee-wee and not this movie. Whenever the dinosaurs in the desert are referenced. I do, however, maybe this speaks to, my addictive personality, strongly remember Reno and always associate the biggest little city in the world with this movie.
That's fantastic.
And I remember Jenny Lewis and Jenny Lewis taking him to Reno and her being like a Reno kid, and I thought that was great and unusual,
inappropriate, and great.
I think this movie is fucking wild for so many reasons, but the most wild thing about it is that proper English thespian Tom Mison demanded we do it.
Yes.
So what is going on, Tom? Because as much as I love The Wizard kind of falls. There are a bunch of movies in 1989 that were made only for me for whatever reason. The Wizard was made only for me. The Holds Barred
was made only for you. Field of Dreams was made only for you.
But those are big movies, but like also like real long tail shit. Like Kickboxer's made only for me.
Sure.
You
No
know,
Holds
so
Barred.
The Holes Barred, as I said. So, but those are movies we weren't going to cover because those are crappy Kenny movies. But when you said you were into it, I was thrilled. So what's going on?
I would have expected everyone
to cover
wanting
this.
to do this. Mainly because of what we just said. It's a film that everyone remembers, but no one remembers why.
Yeah.
You're a better programmer than us. We're too high-minded for this shit, Tom.
Yeah, we didn't. We weren't.
I should have done Beau Travail on your 1999, shouldn't I?
Listen, one of these days we're going to get to it.
You're coming back.
Yeah, you're coming back for that. But I'll say this: I do think that this is one of those films because Kenny and I started with like a pretty tight 25 of the best movies of 89. And then when we started to really get into it and started to have a lot of fun with 89, we expanded the list a little bit. It started to grow. And The Wizard is part of that expansion a little bit. But I would also say that it's definitely, for a certain generation, right? It feels like a real kind of moment movie. I mean, it feels like, and again, I'm not a video game person, just to be above board. I've said this on the podcast before, but this movie is Nintendo in my brain. Like this movie is sort of when I felt like I was activated on Nintendo. I don't know if that's how you guys felt.
It was the opposite.
I watched it in 91.
Sure.
Maybe because it came out in the UK in 90. I know I didn't see it in the cinema.
Yeah.
I remember watching it.
Yes.
In 91 on VHS, and it was around the time that, I had a babysitter who was a little bit like an older Jenny Lewis. And,
nice.
She was introducing me at 11 years old or however old I was, 9 years old, to Nirvana and the Pixies. And she dressed like a cool Jenny Lewis. And we played Nintendo together when she came round. And it was my first love. And
so
then this film came out and I was like, oh my God, simply because I got to see Mario 3.
Well, this is...
Now, if you'd have asked 15-year-old Tom, what was that film you watched a few years ago? I would have remembered nothing other than Mario. Something about it, about those three things, Jenny Lewis, the dinosaurs and the Power Glove, stuck in the back, stayed dormant in the back of my head for 30 years. And it's almost as if the film was made for now. It was made for its audience in 30 years' time.
Oh, sure.
Because there's so much about it that it's not a kid's film.
No.
It, in any way. There are a few bits that are ridiculous that we'll get onto later, like the chase through the Universal Studios tour and shit like that.
Awesome.
For the bulk of it, it's not a kid's film.
Nope.
So all of that clearly went over my head, but there was enough of it to stick in my brain.
Well, what's interesting is that there's a Universal executive somewhere who's thrilled to hear what you're saying, right? Which is that he planted these fucking stakes deep in your brain because this movie does feel like a commercial for a lot of things, right? Yeah, please go, Kenny.
Well, no, I think that was one of the strangest things to me because I have a lot of thoughts about this film too, and I call it a film, with all reverence. I want to get into my thing real quick with this movie before we talk about that. My thing is, I was a Nintendo kid. I was obsessed with Nintendo. Anytime I knew exactly what it cost $100 for a Nintendo Entertainment System. Anytime anyone had $100 or I heard about $100, I thought one Nintendo, $200 was two Nintendo.
That's incredible.
The only gift I ever wanted was a Nintendo. I got a Nintendo for my 6th or 7th birthday, and the picture of me opening the Nintendo is still the picture of childhood happiness for me. So the feelings that most people have for Christmas, I have for a Nintendo.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
It is that warm kind of feeling of happiness, joy, and possibilities and exciting and capitalism sinking its teeth into me. So
deep in you.
so they come out with a Nintendo movie. Of course, I'm going to be there. My dad took me to see this when I was 7. But again, this is one of the tamer movies I think I saw in theaters when I was 7. I remember some other things about this. This it's sticking to my head a little more than I think that I realized. Like, I remember Bo Bridges was in it.
Okay.
Bo Bridges and I didn't remember Christian Slater was in it.
I didn't either.
But Bo Bridges, this is one of the performances I remember from it. And what you
again,
were saying,
who are you casting for when you cast Christian Slater in this film? Like, it's a year or two after Heathers.
It's the same year as Heathers.
The same year as Heathers.
Yeah, same year as Heathers. It speaks to me. It speaks to that this movie had aspirations beyond the movie about Nintendo.
Yes.
That and the Bo Bridges casting, like because this was same year as Fabulous Baker Boys as well. Those are real actors to some extent, and Fred Savage, by the way. Fred Savage is the hottest child actor in the country, so they got
shooting what years at the time.
My notes, there are about 4 different times where I've just written Fred Savage is amazing.
Oh,
it's really good.
The weirdest thing about Fred Savage is how can a person at 13 years old have all the charisma in the world, and at 45-year-old have the amount of charisma of like a fucking stick? It's bizarre.
Nothing.
Is he like the charisma Benjamin Button?
Yes.
He's in
he's regressing.
He was in the show, the Netflix show,
Friends with something.
Friends from College.
Yeah.
Friends from College, and he was Billy Eichner's husband. And talk about a guy who has all the charisma in the world. Like it was painful to watch those two together.
Sure.
It was like watching Mike Tyson pummel a guy because Billy Eichner is just a charisma machine, and Fred Savage is like embarrassed to be up there. Okay, so point being, I was surprised by how little this was a commercial for Nintendo. I always assumed it was one giant commercial for Nintendo, but the entire Bo Bridges Christian Slater storyline, with the exception of like legitimizing Nintendo in the eyes of parents, which I think was really kind of savvy.
Genius.
To have Bo Bridges get obsessed with the system.
Yes.
Like, that's not a Nintendo storyline. They're like massive swaths of this movie. Half-hour swaths where there is no Nintendo. There is no video games in it. So, and they only really showcase like 5 games. It really is just, as Phil texted me, and I said it in my notes as well, it's Kid Rain Man.
It's Kid Rain Man.
What was the pitch at Universal where they sent out a brief? The brief
Rain Man, but for kids.
They want a commercial for Nintendo, and then this guy comes in and says, "All right, you want your Nintendo commercial? We've got a kid with PTSD because he watched his twin sister
or autism, probably.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think it's
PTSD, and everyone at Universal went, "We're listening."
Yeah, I know.
Carry on.
I know.
Tell us more. Can I also?
By the way, he's 9 and he's a twin. As someone who watched this with my 9-year-old boy-girl twins, that wasn't the best moment. It was so, because they loved this movie. They were so into it. Some of the few movies
Did
they? My son, who like thinks he's the toughest guy in the world, welled up.
Yeah.
And my daughter talked about it for the next 2 days. So, but when...
What are they like with
what were they like with games?
Yeah.
I mean, do they play video games?
My son is obsessed. My daughter is also pretty into it. But my son plays Fortnite whenever he is allowed to, or whenever he can whenever we're not looking, he is on Fortnite. My daughter
in terms of I don't want to say retro because it's something that I used to play, but retro games.
So
this is a film that has, like you said, huge swathes where it's nothing to do with games, and then the games that you do see are, Mega Man.
So I've done that. I got them that I don't know if you guys remember, the Amazon was carrying the 30 games in one NES thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought one and the Super Nintendo one.
Yeah, as did I. And it felt like that was the kind of thing you can get your kids and not feel terrible about yourself.
Yep.
Like I do now that he has a gaming computer. But yeah, so they're very much up on old games and old gaming characters. This didn't feel like a billion years ago. I think they call them I think they refer to these games as classic now.
Yep. Yep.
And there is a little bit of
like Dickens.
Well, maybe. I mean, I'm trying to think of an actual reference, but like the way the way we might look at movies from 1989 right now. They like something along those lines.
Yep.
But yeah, they were a little primed to like this game, both in terms of content, narrative, and tone.
I was fascinated by this film almost from the moment it started. This movie starts with a child in a lunch pail just walking in the desert alone, and you're just like, what is this movie?
I think that's what I texted you, Phil. Like after the first long shot, this movie's better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, I was just like, what? I'm just going to give a synopsis real quick and let's just get into it. But basically, after his little brother Jimmy is put in a mental institution, I'm sorry, Corey, played by Fred Savage, breaks him out, and the pair run off together to California. On their travels, Corey meets a girl named Haley, played by Jenny Lewis, and discovers that Jimmy is a master of playing video games. With talents like this, he could easily win the top prize of $50,000 at Video Armageddon. While the three travelers hitchhike to the competition, the boys' parents hire a bounty hunter to track him down. I mean, if that's not a synopsis, I don't know what is. I mean, it's incredible.
Perfect.
So this movie was written by David Chisholm, directed by Todd Holland, who would go on to do a shit ton of television. Malcolm in the Middle,
today.
The Office, 30 Rock. He's a huge comedy.
Really? He's
director.
Great.
The Wizard opened on December 15th, 1999, in fifth place behind National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, War of the Roses, Back to the Future Part 2, and The Little Mermaid. It would go on to make $14.3 million on a $6 million budget. It's a cult classic now, though. They did a whole Alamo Drafthouse with the cast and director and everybody a few years ago. The Wizard has 29% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and 60% from audiences. So you can really see who this movie was made for. I'm going to read a little bit of Ebert's review. 1-star review. He gave it 1 star. The Wizard is one of those movies that provokes the "hey, wait a minute" syndrome. You know, the kind where you keep saying, "Hey, wait a minute." Do you mean to say a trucker wouldn't even stop to say he saw 2 little kids coasting down an interstate highway on a skateboard? Or wait a minute, do businessmen on their lunch hours really gamble on video games?
You're asking the wrong questions.
I agree. I agree. He says, I know The Wizard is only a silly Christmas kiddie movie and we aren't supposed to ask questions like that, but we must. I don't know why we must. But anyway, in an age when child abduction is the subject of half of the TV docudramas and all the milk cartons around the country, how are we supposed to blind ourselves to the central fact of this movie, which is that a 13-year-old boy and his 9-year-old brother, accompanied by part of the way by a 13-year-old girl, managed to watch hitchhike and con themselves all the way to Utah for the National Video Game Championships in LA. I mean, I think that he's being glib and a little bit unfair to a movie that's, I mean, not really trying to be.
Well, I'll say one thing.
Yeah, please.
This movie in 1989 was, in the eyes of our parents and our parents' generation, of which Ebert is a member, was a sign of the apocalypse. So they were all kind of programmed to hate it because it was a Nintendo movie. Yep. Just like I would be pre-programmed to hate a Fortnite movie, which I couldn't conceive of liking a Fortnite movie. It's destroying my family.
The Emoji movie.
Which by the way is so much better. Not that the Emoji movie's good, but I've obviously watched it 3 times with my children. And the Emoji movie is not the worst movie ever made, the way people describe it. It's not good.
Phil, interesting.
Well,
interesting. I'm interested because I've never seen the Emoji movie. I don't know. Maybe it is good.
But I think Tom, you have a really good point. It's not good, but it's not good. But people talk about it like it's the worst movie ever made. But if you actually read the reviews, it's the same as these reviews, which is essentially how can you make a movie about these things that are destroying our society? All right, well, in 30 years, something else will be destroying our society, and emojis will be cute. And right now, I think that the Nintendo aspects of it are quaint and charming.
And not even and relatively organic. Like they do a pretty good job of folding them into the narrative of the movie in a way that feels pretty organic. I mean, shoehorned into the Bo Bridges part, but yeah.
and into the garage when they go to get their truck sorted. And
it's not. It's
Slater
not.
brings out the NES. But Hitchcock talks about the plausibilists, and there are plausibilists in the audience that you just have to ignore because plausibility is dull, and dullness is the enemy of storytelling. And I think, you know what? Hitchcock would have loved this film.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Well,
Hitchcock would have loved this film.
I think anybody who loves cinema would love a movie where two 60-year-old businessmen gamble with a 9-year-old on video games in a bar. Like, that's good.
I love that. See, this is the thing.
That's Terry Gilliam-esque. I don't know how
I agree.
Yeah.
I know you do. Wait, Tom, what were we going to say? Here's the thing.
Well, there are all of these moments where they go for complete truth, and they want, especially around the family, and they want real honesty.
Yep.
And then there are so many different films in this one film. And then you get moments of complete absurdism. It's absurd that there are two businessmen standing in an arcade with a Tom Petty poster up against the side of the arcade machine, playing computer games, and then they hustle with a kid. It's absurd, and I'm fine with that. I think a lot of very serious films could do with a little bit of that absurdism.
I fully agree. And I would also say, too, that, like, we've talked about this a ton, Kenny, in terms of intent. And, a movie makes itself clear as to what it is in the first, 5 to 10 minutes. And you're either along for the ride or you aren't, right? This movie presupposes that children can do things that they can't do. Like, they can't just, like... Basically, Fred Savage and Jenny Lewis are essentially written like they're in their 20s or 30s for all intents and purposes. Yeah. And yet you're just watching it being like, yeah, all right. I mean, Jenny Lewis is from Reno. She knows how to con people out of money. Sure.
But
she knows truckers. She knows truckers. They have a code. And then
she can weaponize them at any moment.
Exactly. They sleep in a cave. They sleep in a scrapyard. They sleep in an old drive-in cinema. They do all of this. But then the only 2 times you see what Fred Savage has in his backpack, the first time it's a skeleton mask,
a Halloween
spider, and I love catapult. That. And the second time it's fake glasses with a nose and moustache.
Yeah. Can we?
I want to say.
You brought up the Halloween mask, and I just need to say the Halloween mask moment when he puts it on and she punches him and knocks him out, just knocks him straight out.
Yeah.
What is this movie?
That was so cool. That was who that character is. I don't get scared. He puts on this mask and she punches him. She's dope. I want to say, all right, to your point, Phil, this movie falls squarely into a genre. We talk about a lot of genres or a lot of kinds of films that never come back, that they made in the 80s or they made in the 90s that we don't make anymore. But yet usually, like, they never make a movie like this, or they don't make this genre anymore. And the genre is Screen Drafts, our brother podcast. We're having Ryan on tomorrow. Screen Drafts did an entire podcast about kid venture movies. And let me read to you the movies that are on the kid venture list. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, The Goonies, The Monster Squad, Stand By Me, E.T., Harry Potter, give me a break, and I Declare War, which I've never heard of. But those first 5 movies are just like what you're talking about, Phil. They are movies that presuppose that kids are smarter than adults think they are, that kids are able to create their own adventures, that kids are capable in times of crisis, in times, and kids stick together better than adults. And I think that is really, like, exciting and empowering. And I love that as a kid to, like, we're making small points. I don't think we're being sarcastic at all about some of the absurdities. Yeah. This is an absurd premise, but it's absurd for it's absurd for power for good reason. It's absurd for good. It's absurd for good. Like, it's using its powers for good is what I'm getting.
Sure.
Good thing to show kids this empowered, this intelligent, this much more pure than adults. It's freeing. I love that about this film. Like,
can I just say,
though, I think that the Nintendo film could have been anything. The Nintendo film could have been, by the way, one of the worst movies ever made. the Bob Hoskins Super Mario Brothers, which was like the other Nintendo film, but like this is like a really, really strong advertisement for Nintendo as an accoutrement to childhood and not as your entire childhood. I think that's
I agree with
cool.
that. I think it's also it's weird, but like I just happened to be rewatching Thelma and Louise because it was its 30th anniversary the other day, which is again
Similar
another
flick.
Well, I mean, it's a road trip movie, and it's obviously they're very different in tone. But I love a good road trip movie. I love a movie where you're on the road and as you said, sort of the kidventure of it all, but also just sort of kind of embracing the beauty of American geography. This idea of just sort of I don't know, finding yourself along the way. I think that's a really nice notion. And I think that having kids do that is really nice. I think that's a really interesting idea. You could never make this movie today for all the reasons that we're talking about in terms of fucking Roger Ebert's jaded review and people being like, you can't just have kids doing this sort of stuff. But I love that this movie got made because of it. I want to just very quickly, I found something online that I love, which is there are literal translations of this title in foreign countries that are phenomenal. In Germany, this film was known as Joystick Heroes. In Italy and Brazil, it was The Wizard of Video Games. Film. It does sound like a porn film.
The Wizard of Video Games. Come on, guys.
In Spain, it was the Champion of Video Games. In Sweden, it was Game Boy. Finland, it was just called Game Over, which is kind of dark.
So dark. That's so Finland.
In Quebec, it was called The Child Genius. And in Japan, it was called Sweet Road.
Because it's just another movie in Japan. That is just another movie about video games. Oh, it's the road movie about video games.
I mean, yeah, it's just insane that Japan of all countries didn't jump on the video game component. I find interesting. I also think it's great that after several rejections, the producers got permission to shoot in Reno when they let a state official's kid meet Fred Savage. So Fred Savage star power got them the right to shoot in a Reno casino. I just think it's ridiculous.
That's
yeah. So you mentioned this kind of, Kenny, you were circling this earlier, and I agree that like you can't get stuck on the nonsense plot holes or suspense of disbelief stuff. You got to be like, I think that this movie has the best of intentions. I think this movie is a kind movie about kids. It's about a brother protecting his brother from a mental institution that he shouldn't be in. I mean, I don't know what this movie's mental health thesis is necessarily, just in terms of let's
ignore it.
That's one of the reasons I said that he suffers from PTSD, because
sure.
They clearly try and skirt around the specifics of learning disabilities, and I think I'm in two minds about it. On the one hand, sure, that's not the story you want to tell, so don't occupy yourself with that where you might fall flat and become deeply offensive. But then, is it offensive to just completely ignore it? I think the one thing that I was trying to work out throughout the film and ended up falling on the side of the film was, because it's so clear from the very beginning, from the first police officer who sees him on that first road in that first scene, everyone around them is really bad at dealing with learning disabilities.
Yes.
Really bad. Yeah. And I thought, is it the characters, and it's saying something about the state of America's approach to people with learning disability, or is it the film just trying to either wash over it or make a joke if they can get away with one? And I ended up falling on the side of the film.
Well, Tom, all right, so I didn't want to talk about anything serious this episode, but we can. I think your reading of the film is appropriate. I think it's appropriate to be generous towards this film.
Yeah.
I think you made the point that it's PTSD and not autism, because PTSD is the actual it's the closest to a diagnosis that you get within the content of the film.
Sure.
And the only real argument for autism is that it seems to be a ripoff of Rain Man. However, when you but that's never alluded to, and the movie that you brought up that I bet this was modeled on is Tommy. Mm-hmm. And in Tommy, it's PTSD very clearly. That's explicit in that film. And the album and the stage play and all that stuff. So, and I think, knowing very little about the effect of PTSD on children, my layman's understanding is this kind of thing could happen. You could experience a massive trauma as a child, and you could have essentially locked-in syndrome, which is more or less he has a mild form of that. I don't think it also makes you a great video game player. I think those two things are.
Well, you're not a doctor, Kenny.
As I said, I'm a layman. But I think those two things are best understood as coincidental. Sure. He happens to be a great video gamer who also happens to be, have experienced an unbelievably traumatic event.
I think you can forgive the film all of this for exactly the same reason that you forgive the sticking out like a sore thumb absurdity moments, is because, as Phil said, it's such a well-intentioned film. Despite being, to all intents and purposes, a commercial for Nintendo, it's got so much heart to it. Yeah, and because I always think, as I mentioned before, Hitchcock with the plausibilists, where do you start forgiving a film for the gray areas and go along with the story? And in this, it's because it's so pure and the kids are so good and it's got such a decent family feel to it that you have to just go along with the story.
It also speaks to the performances too. I mean, this is a solid cast of really good fucking actors. They're pros. And it's like, I think about those scenes between Fred Savage and Jenny Lewis. They've got legitimate great chemistry. I don't obviously mean romantically, but just like they play off of each other really well. I think that, all the scenes, as we mentioned, Christian Slater and Popper just might very well seem like they're in a different movie, but it's a nice movie. It's a movie that, like, when it cuts away to them, I'm just like, sure, I like these two. This father-son story seems nice. I mean, like, and again, we've said this obviously before, Kenny, on many occasions, but like actors they can get you on board. You just buy things because it's coming out of a person that you're invested in.
Fred Savage and Jenny Lewis, I will go ahead and say they do have romantic chemistry. I would say my evidence for that is my daughter being terrified that they were going to kiss throughout the whole movie.
Terrified.
Well, she doesn't like kissing. She was,
fair enough.
And let's keep it that way. She
I have to say the line, "It's not sexist, it's romantic," is probably one of the greatest lines ever committed to film.
What was the context for that?
She calls him sexist. He's talking about Zelda.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, Zelda's trying to find a princess, you're trying to find a house. That's sexist. It's not sexist, it's romantic.
And it sounds like something James Bond would say.
But also,
imagine Roger Moore saying that.
Yeah, right.
But wait, I lost my train of thought on that one. Somehow, Tom, you
I had a vital point to lead to Roger Moore.
I'm sure I had a very important point.
You were talking about chemistry, and it was Layla doesn't like kissing, and
Layla doesn't like kissing, and they do have romantic chemistry. I guess that's the period on the end of this sentence for now.
I mean, they do. I mean, listen, I think that they do have chemistry. It is. I mean, Jenny Lewis didn't do much acting. She kind of did a couple things. We're going to see her again in Troop Beverly Hills this year. It's a big year for her. She does a couple things. And then she goes to school, and then she becomes a musician with Rilo Kiley, and that's kind of it. And I understand, obviously she's gone solo now, but I think she's a really good actor, and it's kind of a shame that she didn't do more of it. I think that she's very watchable. She's just got a real charm about her in a role that is, as I said, seems like it's written for a 30-year-old. She does have this sort of rough and tumble street smarts thing that I buy.
Her role is the most ridiculous role in the whole movie.
What
is she even doing there? She just hangs out in the middle of the country and takes people near her home. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard, but I don't even care. It's fun. She like, no, this is about.
What about we meet her in a bus stop, in a bus station, reading Cosmo behind sunglasses?
Right.
Where's her family? What's going on?
She's just a vagabond ragamuffin, and I love that about her. But this is about the intent of the movie and the big heart of the movie, and what I was getting at, which is hard to believe because again, this movie is about Nintendo, and the big draw of this movie for giant nerds, Nintendo nerds who weren't nerds, they were the coolest kids in the school, was you get to see Super Mario Brothers 3
for the first time.
For a movie about right, but for a movie about Nintendo that climaxes at Universal Studios, to have your denouement happen and your emotional climax happen and your closure happen now nowhere near a Nintendo, in the belly of a dinosaur, where we find what his fucking rosebud is, and his rosebud is like family, and now his life is complete again because he found like a sister figure to fit back into that like sister-sized hole he was missing. What is going on here? How is this like? How is it? And my son is crying. How is this movie more profound than like any movie we've done? How is this possible?
Can we all agree that if this movie was made today, it would take place inside a Nintendo and we'd be like in the fucking games, right?
Yeah,
like it'd be something, right?
The proof of that is Space Jam is taking place inside of a fucking computer.
In the internet. Inside the internet.
So I mean, the internet.
It just goes to show that like when The Wizard is a nuanced piece of cinema compared to what we do with it today, we might have lost the thread.
This is a better film than Space Jam.
No, this is an amazing film, and it's a comment on post-yuppie capitalist America. It's no coincidence, and divorce. It's no coincidence that the evil stepdad, 2 years after Wall Street, looks exactly like an extra from Wall Street. And it's about, and you watch these amazing shots, the montage shots of them crossing the country, crossing the heart of America. And what does it show you? It shows you desolate farms. It shows you desolate fairgrounds with an empty Ferris wheel. It shows all of the desolate areas where they sleep. And America is broken. And there are three kids that they think they're going to find the answer in the closest thing to counterculture that they have, because counterculture doesn't exist anymore. Counterculture died as soon as Levi's started pre-ripping jeans. Yeah. And there's nothing for that generation to hold on to create a better future. So what do they have? They have a distraction of video games. And that's what they go towards. And the film's not saying video games are the answer. They're saying, yeah, sure, it's a nice little distraction for a while, but you've got to get back to who you are as an individual and your place within the family in order to find any kind of future. And I did not expect that from The Wizard.
Yeah, I didn't expect any of like this type of message.
That was good, Tom.
That was fantastic.
Impressive.
I would also say, can we talk about the fact that that montage you speak of is scored to Send Me an Angel?
Yeah, I love it.
What's going on with this film? I love it so much.
I know.
Like it's so easy to dismiss a movie like this is the problem. Like I think that we dismiss movies all the time as it's whatever. You see the poster and you're like, I get it.
The Power Glove film.
And right. And then you watch this and you're like, this movie actually has something to say. Sorry, Ken.
Well, I think about it, in contrast to Space Jam, which has had a bit of a reclamation as a quote unquote good movie, right? A movie that people like and a movie that people enjoy, and not just an ad for Nikes or an ad for Warner Brothers or some kind of weird, Michael Jordan vanity project.
Right.
And Space Jam is fun, and I do like Space Jam a lot. But Space Jam, I think, is beloved with a wink and a nod, right? There's an irony to loving Space Jam in 2021.
But I'd say a younger generation than us really genuinely loves that film. Like there's a nostalgia and a genuine love for that film. I'm just for what it's worth.
That's fair. That's fair, but forget them. Like that's
okay.
I agree, but I don't really care. I do think people our age do like that movie. Ironically,
for sure.
That's one of the best things you've ever said. I agree, but I don't care. I'm gonna store that.
I say that all the time.
Classic Nybart.
Classic
I
Nybart.
agree. I don't care.
You're right, but let's forget about it. So the spaceship thing.
Yeah.
Any reclamation of this movie, I think, would start with ironic detachment, right?
Yes.
Like I love and I think that anybody who likes it now is like, I love the Wizard because I'm cool and I remember, the Nintendo movie and God forbid I should actually like it, sincerely with my full heart. I think what this podcast is trying to do right now is asking people to go back into the world of the Wizard, with no irony whatsoever, and just let it happen. And I think you're going to find it's a pretty beautiful.
And go on Rotten Tomatoes and let's get that audience score.
Get it up to 90.
Up from 6 up to 90. Yeah. Because also another weird thing, thinking back to what we said earlier about how it's almost as if they were making it for the audience now, 30 years later, is when you get to bits like the Power Glove, suddenly the soundtrack is weird synth pipes. And the way that he's framed and the way that Lucas turns to say the line, I love the Power Glove, it's so bad. That's written for us now. Yeah. That is shot for us now. Yeah. And everything that Lucas does, Lucas, who's the character who we're going to retrospectively love with irony, is riddled with irony in the way that they present him.
There's something almost, when the glove shows up, that scene when we meet Lucas and he does the glove scene, it almost felt Lynchian to me. Like it almost had this this weird sort of like foreboding kind of eeriness to it. Maybe I'm projecting, but still, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I think you're right. Even when you first meet him and he's got his games,
this metal face,
and he's got 97 games, and he doesn't say I'm the fucking best at all of them. I'm amazing. He just says, I'm good at all of them.
Imagine. All right, so I think that's a really interesting point. Imagine being an old person, hypothetically, in 1989, and seeing this movie. It would feel like watching a David Lynch film. It would feel, because there are all these things about there are all these aspects of this movie that make no sense, right? No sense to a grown-up. The Power Glove, the 97 games, all these things, and they would have no concept of what is real, like the Power Glove, and what is absurdist, like businessmen playing in a bar. It would all just feel like Mulholland Drive to me. So what you get to be in this movie, because you're not an old, or you wouldn't when it came out, is a person who somehow is on David Lynch's wavelength,
totally,
while watching the David Lynch film. And like I said, I've been mainlining Twin Peaks, and I desperately want to understand Twin Peaks, and I can't, because there are all these things. But like, if somehow like there was a way to like take a pill and for it all to kind of come together, then it would be The Wizard. Like, so
yes.
So I do think that there's a Lynchian quality.
There is kind of that.
Because again, as I said many times about David Lynch, David Lynch has, in my opinion, has no concept of what Lynchian means. Correct. He's just making movies that make sense to him.
To him, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're just trying to hold on for dear life. See what the fuck is going on.
So, I agree. Your Roger Ebert gave up. Your Roger Ebert,
for sure. I mean,
he just assumed it was stupid.
He also, I mean, part of that review also feels so much like he went in with preconceived notions, right? Like he knew what this was, and this is just a fucking commercial, and blah blah blah. He didn't really dig into it. I mean, 1 star is laughable considering some of the movies that we've seen, Kenny, that he gives really favorable reviews to. That you're just like, wait, what? I also want to talk just very quickly about just this movie's well made too.
But like, I also think if someone gave a review akin to what Tom just said, they'd get fired. That'd be the end. I can't think of a bolder take in 1989 than calling The Wizard a Lynchian comment on capitalism's destruction of America.
On the end of counterculture in America today.
Oh my God.
Yes, and how an absence of counterculture has been, the vacuum has been filled by video games, but it is not the video games that are the true villain. It is the guy who aspires to be Gordon Gekko.
And yet I still wept at the end.
And yet, what a film.
God,
I was
Why did you weep? What happens at the end? Well, the kid leaves a lunchbox in a fucking dinosaur. Sure.
And by the way,
what's in the lunchbox? Some shoes.
And I say this as
shoes.
Shoes. I say this as someone. I say this as someone who unabashedly loves the Karate Kid and everything it stands for. This film is twice the movie The Karate Kid is.
Yeah.
Like it's because I was thinking, because I haven't forgotten the dinosaur, and I was thinking at the end of the video game thing when your man won, when Jimmy wins. By the way, his name is James Woods, but
that's true.
When your man Jimmy wins, all I wanted was for Lucas to pull a Billy Zabka, be like, "You deserve it, man! You did it! You are the wizard!" But that's not what this movie's about.
It's not. You know how you know that that's not what this movie is about? Is that when we get to the tournament, it's a terribly structured tournament with no suspense, where the kid skips like a million fucking rungs, so he really only has to do a video game once. It's just like, wait, what?
Well, there's no organization from the people running the show. They just expect the kids to stay close by. There's it's just a line of TVs with
it was the 80s, man.
NES on top, and probably they had to blow into the start lead at the back. Blow the cartridges if it froze. And then also, Mario 3 is a game completely devoid of tension.
Yeah.
So how do they build tension? They just have to have, why knights?
I know, they just faked it.
Yeah.
I know.
And they play for 10 minutes.
As a kid, that really did bother me. Like, I mean, now I don't care, but as a kid, it did bother me because no self-respecting Nintendo guy actually cares about points. You care about moving forward, winning the game. I'll win the game with 0 points. But whatever. Who cares? The movie rules. Has nothing to do with that.
You know who I do think, the one character that I do think gets sort of short shrift in this movie is the mom, who's painted like a straight up villain and isn't even with the rest of the family.
She's not even with them at the end.
This movie is a little it's a little anti-mom. I would agree with that.
She's in a shot with the bounty hunter.
Because the moment that really came clear to me was when you find out that Jenny Lewis also has a mom who ran off. It's
pretty anti-mom. Yes. It's very anti-mom.
Moms hate video games. I get it.
I mean,
but then she atoned at the end by giving up her son with special needs.
Appropriately so.
Someone else's problem.
Appropriately so. She should have got up to Bo Bridges and go, "You're the real dad. You deserve him. You've earned him."
Yeah, it's really not it does feel kind of anti-mom. There's something worth noting that Robert Yeoman shot this movie, who's Wes Anderson's director of photography.
Wow.
So he's got quite the career ahead of him. It's well shot. It's good.
That's crazy.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. It's a beautifully made film.
It really is. Jenny Lewis, born in Las Vegas, so there's that. She kind of knows Reno and Nevada. I want to just kind of walk through.
What does that mean? Is that something I should know about?
I'm sorry?
Is it relevant that she was born in Vegas?
Well, she's born in the same state that Reno is in.
Oh my God! Seriously, Phil? Wow.
I'm just saying that she knows what it's like to be a kid living in Nevada. So it's,
give the guy some grace.
No. I wondered whether there was something. Jesus. I didn't know about it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God.
That was just, I'm just trying to, inform our audience. But it's
my fault. It's my fault for coming into this podcast so hot.
I feel like pretty hot.
I come in every podcast hot, but I feel like this is Tom's third time, or third or fourth? Third time, and now he's just letting it all hang out.
Yeah.
Now I'm showing the real me. I hate this podcast.
I mean, Cruel
But you love
Intentions
this
feels like a
movie.
lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Cruel Intentions. Yeah, thank God.
God, I can't wait to hear your rating on this.
Oh my God. So basically we meet Jimmy at the beginning. He's on a deserted highway walking by himself. Police pull over and take him back to his parents, who his stepfather and his mother are complaining about the burden of dealing with this child who has PTSD and keeps repeating the word California over and over again. Jennifer's death, his twin sister.
In retrospect, they might have been able to figure out what he was referring to.
I think
that one time the family went to California.
Remember that time we all went there together? They put Jimmy in an institution, which seems extreme. And Corey, played by Fred Savage, finds out about this and is determined to get Jimmy out of said institution, which he does very easily. He sneaks them both into the back of a Hostess Wonder Bread truck that just happens to be inside the institution, and then they eat their way to like Utah or wherever.
But somehow Jimmy also was able to sneak out without even Fred Savage's help. It seems like a pretty low level of security there.
Very low level.
Yeah.
The facility is pretty bleak, though. They do make it seem pretty not fun, so I get it.
Again, it's an indictment on 80s America's treatment of people with learning disabilities. This is exactly like Joker.
No.
My so that was pretty dystopic for my children. The mental institution, and they said, "What are they doing?" And I said, "That's what they used to do," and you know, for kids with mental issues, and they go, they just sit in a room all day and watch TV. I'm like, yeah. They're like, they almost in unison go, "That sounds great." They were very into the idea of being institutionalized as long as they have 24/7 access to television.
Well, so at this point, the stepdad hires a bounty hunter to find Jimmy and Corey. The bounty hunter's name is Mr. Putnam.
Who plays Mr. Putnam? Do we know?
Oh, that's a very good question.
He is straight out of central casting for pederasts. He's exactly who you would cast.
He kind of looks like he belongs in a Coen Brothers movie, but let me see who this gentleman is. I don't know that he's done much else outside of this film, because he's also kind of burdened with.
There is no chance this dude hasn't done a lot. Like that guy. I bet that guy has upwards of 100 IMDb credits.
Okay, he's 25. So
he's 25 credits?
He's 25 credits. His name is Will Seltzer. He's in Twin Peaks, though, Kenny.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in Twin Peaks.
Mr. Brunston? Oh, he's in season 2. I haven't gotten to him yet.
Yeah, he's just he's a guy. He did fine. But so Mr. Putnam is hired.
Well, I want to say something about Mr. Putnam.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Putnam is a guy who specializes in runaway children.
Correct. Which underscores Tom's theories about this.
Well, it also I'm going to give him a little more leeway, because he whether or not he's a pederast would have no bearing on whether or not he's good at his job. But he's very bad at his job. And so I assume it's just because he's one of the worst bounty hunters in the game. That's why he's specializing in slow, dumb children and not actual. He's also like 95 pounds and not actual criminals who he can actually get money for. But he might also be.
The only time you ever see him have interaction with children, it's incredibly violent. The first time
stealing them.
Yes. Well, the first time you see him, this is even before he's gone through all of the turmoil of the journey. It's way back in the first montage. The Send Me
I remember. Yeah.
In the Send Me an Angel montage, and he sees two kids looking at the view. Now he thinks this is the same day that he was invited, or the day after he was asked to do it. He sees two kids. It might be them. What does he do? He goes up and he grabs them, and he turns them around.
Great casting. Great back casting for those kids.
Yeah, very good, very good back casting.
And then he gets aggressive with a kid playing pinball with his arm in a cast. So that's another disabled child. Then he just goes and outright in the middle of a casino
just
steals a child.
And she has to scream, "He touched my breast."
He's not stealing a child. I gotta give this guy a little more respect. He's not stealing a child. It is his job. Okay, occasionally he's got to rough these little fucks up.
Well, that's capitalism.
That's capitalism. Yes, that's right. Capital.
Got a job to do. Yeah.
No, that's exactly what capitalism is. Sometimes capitalism, you have to call it.
You got to steal a kid to make a buck.
Pay for it. You got to fuck it. You got to fuck a kid up.
How to steal a kid to make a buck?
Can you think of a more awkward casting call than the casting call for Fred Savage and Luke? What is it? Luke Edwards? That's the kid's name.
Luke Edwards. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For their the back doubles, where you have all these kids come in and you are now turn around. Let me see you guys.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now they meet Haley, a teenager on her way home to Reno, at this bus stop. They discover that Jimmy has an
way home from where?
Exactly. She doesn't really get into that. But they discover that there's this Video Armageddon, which is a gaming tournament held at Universal Studios Hollywood with a grand prize of $50,000. So Putnam slashing Bobridge's tires.
Hang on. Going back to when she first meets them, and he's the deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays a mean double dragon. And she shows them the Armageddon, the game Armageddon advert, and her exact words are, "Do you think they put him in a home after he wins this?" And I just wrote that quote and wrote iffy. It's iffy. That's an iffy line.
It's an iffy line. That's that. Well, she's a child of capitalism. She gets it. As long as
Haley also has the line shortly thereafter, "You got to be very adult to live in Reno."
And then you get to Reno, and the first thing they show for it being Sin City is a huge billboard promoting Glenn Campbell.
So then the trio hitchhike cross country using Jimmy's skills to win bets on games. Just a couple businessmen playing video games on their lunch break at a bar. Then we talked about the Halloween mask. Send me an angel. I also I liked the moment in the back of the pickup when there's like a Native American family and Jimmy for the first time says hi, which is like a really nice moment. Like this movie actually has a really interesting, and you kind of hit it, Tom, earlier, but like a really interesting perspective on like America and like the part of America that they're in, which is...
And it's no coincidence that it's at that exact moment after showing the desolation of 1980s America. Mm-hmm. And that's the moment where you see an indigenous family and the only character in the entire film who is completely guileless. Mm-hmm. It's the only time he smiles and says hi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy's the kid. Jimmy's the journey, and he knows that these are the good guys. Yeah. The indigenous family are the good guys. Everyone else is an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Jimmy gets it. The thing about Jimmy that makes him a bit of a cipher is that he gets it, and then he also realizes that they want to use him for money, and he's kind of okay with it. Like, I'm not knocking it.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, Jenny Lewis wants 50%. Like that's
correct.
Fucked up. That's some Angelo Dundee shit right there. But
that's true.
But they're gonna make him a star, baby.
Well, a big turning point for me with Corey and Haley is when he's kidnapped. The first time when he's kidnapped, or no, the second time when he's kidnapped from her trailer.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
and they see him driving off.
Yeah,
and
more successful.
First thing they do, the real one, the proper one, the one that's going to make him the big bucks. They don't talk with any concern about Jimmy. The first thing they discuss is whether it's worth trying to save him. Do you think he could win the tournament if
correct.
we save him?
Yeah. Correct. That's what Corey says.
I think I wrote it down somewhere.
I think it's okay to give these characters the credit when they say something wise beyond their years, and to remember and to then also say, hey, but they're 13, as it suits your needs as a viewer. Sure. Well, I'm kind of kidding, but
but it's not untrue though. Like I'm thinking of
Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Those are lists.
I want to ask a question about the power glove because we're at the point where they meet Lucas and we have the scene we talked about. Did any of you have a power glove or ever play with a power glove?
Yes, it sucks.
Yeah, it sucked, right? It was fucking terrible.
Yeah. Every Nintendo accessory ever, with the possible exception of the gun, which was like only good for duck hunt, sucks.
Yeah.
Power glove, Power glove sucked, and it looked
really sucked. It sucked because it became abundantly clear very early on when you had it on your hand that like there weren't any actual like receptors in the glove itself. It just had a thing on the top that could actually like, right? So then all of a sudden you're punching stuff with your left hand, most likely, which is not your dominant hand for a good chunk of people. And you're just, it doesn't make any sense. Like all of it's just very counterintuitive. But I remember it looked cool and I wanted one. But I agree.
But then it doesn't, it looks like a prop. You've been perfectly within your rights to think some fucking prop guy realized he was meant to create something called a power glove to which they're shooting tomorrow, but he's gone out and got shit-faced the night before. Quick, get me a glove and put loads of buttons on it, and when you press the buttons, let's have it do Close Encounters music.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's hard to believe that it actually exists, and I love that it did, even though it was terrible.
I agree too. I haven't seen this movie in a long time, right? So I watched it in theater when I was 9, probably 350 times on like television, but I haven't watched the movie probably since I was 12 or 13. In my head, Lucas was like a 20-year-old man who looked like Paul Walker with a mullet, but like was strong and scary. Like Lucas is a little kid. It's crazy to like go back and see these. Like that's maybe more than any character I can remember. I now feel very old looking at this person I used to have just massive amounts of admiration for as a badass motherfucker. This was the guy.
What was the diner at an airfield? That's what I was trying to work out.
Yeah,
it looked to me like it was an airfield, and I love that. That's where Lucas hangs out. The really, the big main cool villain. He hangs out at a diner by an airfield, sometimes with his goons, who I have to say are absolutely perfect. That's some of the best goon acting I've ever seen. All they do, sit there. They have no dialogue. They just laugh when he says something. And again, it's done for us now. Yep. And I love that. And then the next time you see him, he's sitting with his back to the camera at the diner, just flicking through a games magazine.
He's the one who ultimately tells Bo Bridges of all people where they are, right? Or does he tell he tells the bounty hunter?
The bounty hunter.
Yes.
Yeah. But he holds everyone's reading game magazines, and they're always one page right before video, the ad for Video Armageddon. Like, it must be going here.
Yeah. Can I also say that you mentioned the porch that he's sitting on and his goons that Lucas has? There is a very Western kind of quality to Lucas. Like he's got this gunslinger, kind of quality to him that I didn't really lock into until you mentioned that, Tom, because it does feel like he fits those archetypes in a lot of ways. And also one of his goons, as I mentioned on Twitter, is Tobey Maguire in his first screen credits with some sweet ass hair.
One of his best performances.
I think that Corey's frustration with Jimmy's PTSD or what have you, that was maybe the most reminiscent of Rain Man for me, when he was just like, he had a very like Tom Cruise and Rain Man and knocking over all the popcorn things that he's building and being like, you're not getting better. You're not getting, like, just frustrated with it. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? It was a lot, but that's when
I mean, that's actually worthy of derision. So let's deride it a little bit. Jimmy's the window into Jimmy's brilliance is that he could do some Legos? He's a 9-year-old. 9-year-olds are capable with Legos. Even in 1989, your average 9-year-old. You're like you're
motor skills.
Student can do anything with Legos. This guy, he's barely competent when it comes to Legos, and he's doing a house of popcorn boxes. And this guy is supposed to have some kind of super skill. Whatever, I don't care. But it is like you could have tried a little harder on that one. I think.
I don't disagree. This is when
Rain Man, they spill a fucking matchbox, and he knows how many matches there are immediately. That's a skill.
I agree. Yeah. It's also at this point like it's right up against the goons that come to beat them up. They got fucked up a little bit. They get beaten up by a bunch of. I mean, they look like they're in their early 20s or something. Yeah. Like they get roughed up pretty bad. They knock open Jimmy's lunch pail, which contains photos and mementos.
Because there's no counterculture to give them purpose. Yes. It's all about minor distractions.
They're lost in the So then the lunch pail gets opened. We see the mementos from Jennifer. Corey tells Haley about Jennifer's death and how it's a little fuzzy. They don't get into details really, but like, I guess, because I think the line was like, she didn't even swim. She just died or something like that. Like,
yeah, in like 3 feet of water, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I blacked out during that part because I was so stunned that I had to look at my I had to look at my kids as they're like, wait, what's this movie about? Well, they say the twin sister who died. I'm like,
she drowned. Yeah,
she drowned. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I think my daughter goes, whoa, that's dark.
Yeah, she's not wrong. But don't worry, because we meet Spanky in Reno shortly thereafter, and everything's fine. Yeah. So they get to Reno, and I've been to Vegas a couple times. Kids aren't allowed in a casino, right? Am I crazy? Like kids aren't allowed.
Locals are allowed if they know some. I'm kidding. They're not allowed in a casino.
Okay, no kids.
So that's actually not really true because you have to walk to casinos to get your hotel room. So kids can like far away like they were.
Gamble.
But okay,
no, they can't gamble.
So Haley is probably is a stone's throw from the craps table that Spanky is playing at, and she's
Frank McRae, no less.
Yes, Frank McRae. Yes, my apologies, Frank McRae.
What a year for him! License to Kill, Wizard.
Oh, that's right. He's in License to Kill. I completely.
That's
forgot.
Crazy. You're
That's
right,
incredible.
dude. I can't believe the way you're just our Frank McRae correspondent.
He's my guy. He's my guy. The year after Batteries Not Included. I'm all for.
Also kind of a great movie. I loved that movie as a kid. Batteries Not Included. But so Haley's a stone's throw from the craps table, just straight up screaming advice. Okay?
And it turns out that she's some fucking oracle
Wizard.
on the craps table. A wizard. She's the real wizard.
Yeah, because
you would have to be a wizard. Forget about seeing. You'd have to be a wizard. It is basically yelling. It's basically like the guy's like pick a number from 1 to 10. She's like 9. He's like $100 on 9. He's like it's 9. Like that's how bet the pass line. There's a hard 8. I mean, like she's a clairvoyant. Obviously,
it's kind of like the scene with Sharon Stone in Casino. The first time we see her.
No, she's hustling a guy. It's like someone who's been to the future and has like 5 minutes in the future and has memorized the next 3 roles in a crap book.
It's weird. It's such
so they make
weird
a bunch
moment.
of money. The kids are thrown out with Spanky out of the casino, understandably, as they should have been. Then Jimmy begins training on arcade machines. Gotta love a good training montage as he has to learn all 94 games, which, spoiler, will not be applicable at the end of this movie. Yeah. So it's meaningless. He's learned 94 games that in no way affect his future. Anyway, so then
also I this is a good moment because I got really, really, really excited when I realized they were calling the Tips hotline.
Oh, me too.
Because I'd completely forgotten that the Tips hotline even existed. but I spent so long calling them up to get tips and cheat, and just games magazines with if you want this cheat, up, down, left, right, A, B, start. And I'd completely forgotten about that. And it made me realize that what's really weird is I really, really hate 80s nostalgia films or 90s nostalgia films that are made now. It was my problem as Stranger Things got into later seasons and the nostalgia element took more control. Phil, you probably remember me texting you in absolute rage during Wonder Woman 1984.
No, it's a fair
lots
thing
of rage. Lots
fair
of
thing to be
rage.
rageful for.
And it's because it's such a cheap, easy shot to say, hey guys, you remember Pop Socks? But everything in this that makes me nostalgic about the 80s, I got really excited about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, you know,
and I don't get why I'm not more. Basically, this is my therapy session of why I'm not more forgiving about nostalgia movies. Because as soon as he goes off on the journey, what does he do? He puts on a backpack with a bottle hanging off it. He gets a skateboard, and there's a fucking wailing guitar on the soundtrack. I'm excited. That's so perfectly 80s. Yeah. Lucas, 80s. Yeah. Tips Helpline, 80s. And I love every second of it.
You know what Tony Soprano said about nostalgia? He said...
What did he say about nostalgia?
He said, remember when is the lowest form of conversation. So he agrees with you very strongly. And that makes sense. That's one of those things that when you hear it, really like Chris, like are you, wait, you don't know Jose Molina, not Javier Groucho.
Yes, yeah.
I know Javier as well.
So Javier just tweeted something that was one of those things where you're like, yep, can't do that anymore. Which was when I've written besides in a line of dialogue, I know that I've written the scene wrong and I have to start over. Right. And that's one of those things where like, all right, when Tony Soprano says, remember when's the lowest form of dialogue? It's like, lowest form of conversation. It's like, yeah, all right, I guess it is. I guess you're not really learning anything or building anything. You're just kind of excavating your own past. So I agree
why
with
IP
you,
is so problematic.
It's so depressing.
You know what I mean?
Meanwhile, I'm like literally right now writing a fucking 80-cent television show. But you don't have to watch.
There you go. I think that it's I agree with what you're saying though, that there's something about, but this movie's not trying to pull those strings like a Stranger Things is, Tom. Like that is trying to, that's not weaponizing. You know what I mean?
It was made in 1989. It's a modern movie.
It's why, again, it really, really suits a modern audience.
Yeah,
an audience now,
present day,
and it's why everyone needs to give it a higher Rotten Tomatoes.
I agree. We learned that Haley's mom has a gambling addiction on the roof of her trailer home. We never meet Haley's parents, and at the end it seems
on
like
the road.
and it seems like at the end Haley's sort of just
where's the dad? What does
now.
she say? What does she say about the dad?
He's not
He's a trucker. He's got a truck.
Oh,
it feels like Haley's, her backstory is not all that.
Haley's a
I hate
scam.
backstory.
Yeah,
Tom hates backstory.
That's why I love
Haley's a scamp. She scamps around, and she's like the
Artful Dodger. It's
Artful Dodger.
She is. Yeah, that's a good.
She is a real Dickensian character.
Yeah. What did Layla think when Haley and Corey kissed for the first time? Did she just storm out of the room, or was she okay with it? Or
she did what she pulled one of those. She pulled one of those.
Okay,
bit,
sure. Okay, fair enough.
But I think she was okay with it. I think the kiss was pretty earned. So
I thought so too.
I think Layla's more disgusted by vulgar sex, like sex for the sake of sex. But when it's two people who are really in love, I think she can get on board.
So gratuitous sex. If it doesn't have meaning,
gratuitous sex. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
And I guess it's better than vulgar, but a better word than vulgar. But yes, gratuitous sex.
Tom's reaction to vulgar sex was like
vulgar sex. Yeah, I don't even want to go.
It was the equivalent of a spit take.
I don't want to riff on that any more than than we have. But,
well, while we're at it, we might as well talk about this runner of Putnam having touched Haley's breasts. They go back to this well like 3 or 4 times, and I'm not entirely clear as to why, but I think they think it's funny that this guy could be a child molester.
I mean, the first time she says it, as a way of getting him thrown out, that's one thing. It's
a choice.
Again, it's iffy. It's another iffy moment, but that's one thing. It's coming from her in a desperate moment, accusing a grown-up of doing something that the film is saying is terrible.
Yes.
And so the security guards get rid of Putnam and leave the kids without asking them whether they're okay. Fine. It then becomes problematic when Putnam on the phone says, touch her breasts. She doesn't even have any breasts. That's a bit much.
And then there's a third joke.
And then there's a third one where Spanky, of all people, says you touched her breasts. So they clearly liked it enough to think this is going to be our...
I think that's the last thing Spanky says before they assault him, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because they beat the shit out of him in the middle of the road.
They don't assault him. It's retribution for touching her breast. But what? I'm
not saying you didn't deserve it.
I don't. Again, this is another thing that I don't really care about, but I will make the point that this is the reason this is problematic.
Sure.
More than anything is not, to me at least, the line touch the breast doesn't even have breasts. It's the incepting of the idea that women will use false accusations as weapons against men. And that's the kind of thing that men internalize moving forward when it's not something that really happens in real life. So there was a strain of this. There was this idea of children yelling child abuse to get a scary adult away from them, or put me down, or I'll yell, you touched me, or something like that. And I feel like we see it over and over and over again in films, particularly 1989. It's one of those unfortunate parts of the culture at that moment. I think it is one of those things that I will gladly pretend didn't happen and move on. But I think it is worth noting that this is, I think this is an endemic thing and not something that the wizard, came up with on its own.
I think it's crazy that this movie literally ends at the Universal Studios theme park. I mean, it's really bold.
It starts off as one film, then with odd moments in it. Then it completely changes when they get to Reno, and then it completely changes again once they do their commercial for Universal Studios.
Yeah.
Cool, and I'm fine with it. In any other film, I'd say this is a complete mess. They don't know what they're trying to create. You can tell that the first cut was 2.5 hours. But with this, I don't care, because I want to see them have a chase through King Kong.
I love that King Kong ride.
I agree. I thought the same thing. So they get to Universal. Spanky drives them to the tournament. They realize that Jimmy enters, becomes a finalist after playing one round of Ninja Gaiden. I remember as a kid thinking that the inside of the tournament looked so cool. Like I as a kid was like, this is fucking rad. And it basically looks like the inside of a Nintendo cartridge. It's basically what it looks like. It's made of similar plastic, colored plastic, and kind of bricky in that way.
I feel like the Nickelodeon took that aesthetic and made an entire network out of it.
Correct.
We had a show called Games Master, and it was exactly this. It must have been a couple of years after the film came out, and all it was Video Armageddon. Games Master. So they played games. You play games against each other. The set looked exactly like this. The host was equally terrifying, and they also had a kind of a severed head. They had
like Max Headroom.
Sort of. No, it wasn't Max Headroom. It was more of he was the Games Master, and it was a big hologram.
More like the Wizard of Oz.
And it was a guy called Patrick Moore, who was one of our preeminent astrophysicists at the time, and there he was in Games Masters saying, well done, that was excellent playing on RC Pro-Am.
What a weird country.
That's fucking weird.
You have more
It's
than
weird.
one. That you have more than one preeminent astrophysicists.
Well, it's him and Brian May.
He's one of our preeminent. Is that Brian May of Queen? Is that a thing?
Yeah, he's an astrophysicist.
Oh, of course, everyone knows that.
Can I ask a question? As when we get to the tournament, and I'm trying to find out who this man is. There's a guy at the gate of the tournament who like
I like
lets
that
them
guy.
in. Do you know what I'm talking about? Who that guy
The
is?
preliminary round
Lee
is
Arenberg.
Ninja Gaiden.
No, not the guy who's doing the tournament. The guy who gives them their tickets. It's like
Lee
the guy who
Arenberg.
yeah,
Lee
That's his name?
Arenberg.
he's doing a lot in that
Yeah,
scene.
he's great. He
Now,
looks like the guy who would be
I-
working a Nintendo tournament.
I saw that bit and I thought, that is an incredible amount of ham, and I don't really like the way it's sliced. But I recognize it. And it's not that I recognized him, it's that I recognized the level of his performance and how it made me feel. And it took me all evening to work out where it was from. And I thought, it gave me exactly the same feeling as the guy in Pirates of the Caribbean. There was
It is him,
Mackenzie
right?
Crook with his eye. And it's him.
Wow.
And I recognized
I
it
knew-
because
yeah.
of the level of discomfort that his performance gave
It's
me.
him and the guy from the original Office, the BBC Office, right? They're the pair
Yes,
in the first
yes.
Pirates movie. Yeah, there's something about him, and the kids are getting a laugh out of it because he's clearly like off book and doing whatever the fuck he wants, and they're just like, "What's happening?" It's all a lot.
And kids love it. The reason it was in my head was because a few weeks ago I watched the first Pirates film with my son.
With Rudy, yep.
And it got to that pair, and Rudy just looked up at me and was like, they're cheeky.
Yeah.
And I really want that from now on to be, if someone's performance is just a little bit too much, I think if it can be called cheeky performance there.
So at this point,
Roger Ebert.
this is when we get to the full-on chase through a tram onto the King Kong thing, but it all looks great. It leads up to Jimmy getting hero's entrance into that fucking tournament with the whole
Amazing
thing comes
entrance.
up.
Amazing
Which was dope.
entrance.
I do want to say, as much as I have strong nostalgia for Universal Studios, for the
Sure.
King Kong ride, that part is from a different, much worse movie. That part is from like a blank check, that movie. Like Big Fat Liar, like 80s movies I don't like. Or
90s, but I hear you. Yeah.
Yes, 90s movies. It is, and it does have more of a 90s vibe, that part.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love the gaming part, but just the chase. And I think, that whereas I don't feel like this was a proper ad for Nintendo in the best possible ways. I do think that did feel like a proper ad for Universal in the worst possible
100%.
ways.
Well, just the way it's shot is completely different once they get there, and the soundtrack changes. There's none of the nuanced soundtrack from before. Now it's just these guys are here. Everyone can be a hero in Hollywood type music.
Yeah, it gets like weirdly slick. It gets to a place where it feels, we've said it, but it feels very commercial. It doesn't, but then when they do get backstage and they're like hiding and they go in that elevator thing, like I didn't mind that part of it.
Oh, that was great.
But so then Jimmy gets quite the entrance. He wins the whole thing. Everything's great. And then they go to the dinosaurs and we leave the lunch pail and the family happily rides into the sunset. Haley's apparently part of the family now. She has no parents to speak of that we need to alert to her whereabouts or anything like that. Can
I go back to the tournament and just ask you one thing?
Yeah.
Do you think it is intentional that Lucas's number on his back is 169? And then at one point they shout out that he has 69,000 points. Are they just trying to get 69 lols around Lucas? It has to be
It
intentional.
seems that way.
I think so. I think that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of Simpson real funny guys would do. I will say that I don't know the origin of 69. Like when who was the first one to come up with the idea that the number 69. Well, no, I think the position's probably been around for thousands of years. But
like Kama Sutra stuff.
Yes, undoubtedly that position has been around since the dawn of man. But saying these two numerals next to each other also looks like it. But they do mention it in Bill and Ted's. So I know it was in the culture. Yeah, because it's what the number that they're thinking of is 69,
and then they high five
89 because we did it.
We did.
So it was in and around the culture, and because I know that to be a true fact, Tom, I do think that they did that. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
We have a completely different film again, throwing in just trying to get 69 lols. Mm-hmm. Just at random because they're sticking it on a 12-year-old kid's back.
Yes. Can we have not talked at all about the third contestant, the third finalist, the girl who what are our thoughts about the third contestant?
There's no chance that girl had a shot. Yeah, even to get to the finals. Look at her. Girls, that girl's reading Little House on the Prairie. Come on.
Yeah, she's got a very what's the character that from Superstar, the movie that we did the other 99 movie? What's her name?
Mary Catherine Gallagher.
Mary Gallagher. Yeah, she's got kind of that vibe to her a little bit.
A little bit.
It's I don't know. It's clear that they were just like, I don't remember her name.
Video games too.
They're just like, we need someone that's like funny looking and kind of looks like maybe they'd play video games, and it'd be nice if it was a girl. It feels like that's kind of the whole vibe.
It's such an odd choice to have her in just the generic, she's the unpopular girl, and then to have her really struggle and be sweaty and not enjoy herself.
She's perspiring more than anybody.
Well, not more than the host, but
oh yeah, that's
true. that dude hosts this like he's hosting The Running Man.
He does. I was like, is this guy gonna have an aneurysm? Like he's just really fucking in it.
So what was the line? Introducing Mario. He says something like, "Now I'm really gonna brain you out," which is the most brilliantly 80s line. I don't know what it means.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Mario.
So before
I call him Mario too, and my kid's like, "It's Mario, Dad."
Is it Mario?
I don't know.
It's not Mario? Yeah, no, you're right. It's Mario Kart, right?
It's Mario.
So before we rate this, Tom, I wanted to just talk video games for a second, because is there a video game movie, a movie based on a video game that you love? Because it does feel like, and we talked a little bit about this on our entrapment episode, because why wouldn't we? Because we talked about Pokemon in that episode, but we talked a little bit about this real dearth of any video game adaptation working, because it doesn't. Did we land on any, Kenny, that were good?
I don't think straight from games like Wreck-It Ralph is a really nice film.
Brilliant. Yeah, sure.
That's taking elements of lots of other games rather than being a straight. I can't think off the top of my head,
because like Street Fighter's bad, Super Mario Brothers bad, Mortal Kombat.
So Mortal Kombat is a lot of people's choice.
Yes.
Have you seen the new one?
No. I'm 39-year-old man. Come on. But
come on. You're writers. You have a film podcast.
Yeah, we have.
You need to keep your finger on the pulse.
You are gushing over the wizard. Come on, man. So I do think that there's a segment of people I respect who think the Resident Evil series is good.
Correct. There are people that like them.
And
they passed me by, which might come as a surprise.
And then I do think that
Sonic?
I think Sonic is a successful movie, if not.
My son wanted me to watch that with him, and he, I think, enjoyed it. There was a little bit too much chitter chatter, he said.
Chitty chatter?
Chitter chatter.
Oh, chitter chatter. Okay.
Where's that word, Phil?
But I think, especially Jim Carrey in that film is excellent.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a list right now on Rotten Tomatoes of the list of best, or at least the ranking of best video game movies. They say number 1 is the Angry Birds movie 2. That's got 73% from critics.
I've heard that people like that. I saw it in the theaters. It's one of the worst experiences you can have. Go
ahead. Tomb Raider. Were we fans of of any of the Tomb Raider films?
No.
I mean, Rampage. Final Fantasy.
Rampage. I really enjoyed Rampage.
Rampage is barely a video game and very easily adaptable to what they wound up with.
And again, like you said at the beginning, you get an actor who sells things and there's nothing The Rock can't sell.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
I hear that. I mean, I remember Silent Hill actually being a relatively effective horror movie. Again, I saw it like many years ago, but I thought it was kind of cool. Doom. I mean, again, what we're learning here very quickly, and we have actually one, Kenny, that we need to do for 1999, which is Wing Commander. We still haven't done that one for 99. So there's that to look forward to. But it does feel like, for whatever reason, just doesn't really work. Halo is going to be a TV series on Paramount Plus, I think now, or Showtime. But it's just an odd thing when you think about how gigantic that industry is. When you think about how much love and passion and just fandom that's there, and to not be able to turn that into
especially with computer games now, which are entirely about story.
Yep.
It's about telling a story in a different way. How can that not translate to film? How can you?
The only answer I have is that the best people aren't doing it, because there's absolutely no reason why these characters should be translatable to films. No reason. There's no reason. Like, making a good Lara Croft movie is not hard at all. I mean, I'm saying it's as hard as any other movie, right? It's as hard as making a good any other movie. Like Lara Croft, it's a female Indiana Jones.
Assassin's Creed as well. How can you?
That movie's crazy. That movie makes no sense.
And some of these series, like Final Fantasy, have really intricate mythologies that you can play out through a bunch of movies. That could be a lot of fun. So I just have to think that like the top people aren't giving it a shot, because it can't be that hard. And you want to know what else? I think that I think Nintendo at least is very cagey about their properties, because there are tons of Nintendo properties that have not been adapted, and I think it's crazy that there's no Zelda movie. Like, how is that possible? For instance,
it must be. In the next 10 years, we'll start to get good video game films, because everyone knows how much money the industry makes. But now also, the directors who are being given a shot aren't really the video game generation, right?
Yeah.
Or not even the directors, but the people making them. The people making the decisions aren't old classic gamers. Whereas in 10 years' time, you're going to have the kids who are brought up with video games being a welcome part of the mainstream. And so maybe then we'll start getting...
I think
there was never a good Marvel movie before this run, in my opinion. And I do think that what you're talking about, Tom...
never a good one movie?
Marvel movie.
Right.
Before the MCU, and I would include the Spider-Man movies, which I think are pretty bad. But okay, I mean, they're okay. But I think what you're talking about is this exact thing happening, where real members of the cult made these movies. Starting with Feige and going down. I think that could happen with video games too.
I think there's also a little bit of the, when they announced they were going to do a Lego movie, I was like, we shouldn't do this. This seems like a bad idea. And then you've got Lord and Miller, and they do something with it that's just so meta and so smart and so brilliant. And then it's like, I remember reading, this was years ago now, but that Rob McElhenney, of Mythic Quest and It's Always Sunny, was going to do a Minecraft movie. He was supposed to do one of those. I don't know if that's still in development. I don't know if that's still happening. But again, that's a guy that I kind of think like he's going to think outside the box. He's going to conceivably do something with it that could be interesting. We need to crawl inside this thing and deconstruct it, and not just barf up the same story on a TV screen.
A Minecraft movie made by someone who knows Minecraft would hit me the way The Wizard probably hit adults. that I watch my son play
agree.
Minecraft, and it is like you are in a different, much fucking worse universe. But they think it's the greatest fucking thing in the world.
Yeah. Apparently, at my son's school, they're 6 in his class, and they're running around the playground pretending they're characters from Minecraft. None of them have played Minecraft on a computer. God. But it's now that much part of the psyche.
They teach Minecraft in some schools. It's like
what?
It's they teach Minecraft in some schools. It's like
Tom.
It's
Phil.
I don't even understand.
You need to get back to Canada, Phil.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, apparently
100% true.
Wow.
Apparently,
it's just that's just made me really sad.
So let's rate this movie. I saw this film in 1989, or certainly around there. I don't know if I saw it in the theater, but I might have. I don't really remember. Loved it. Thought it was perfect. Didn't really think particularly critically of it. Kenny just sent us a link to
loved it. Thought it was perfect.
Remote learning about Minecraft. I probably would have said it was like, I don't know, I probably would have given it like an 85 or an 86. Like, just thought it was, just loved it. Before this podcast, I went down a little bit because I thought it was good. I quite enjoyed it.
You went down from 85. I mean, that's that. You shouldn't feel too bad about it.
I don't feel too bad. I'm still at an 80. Like, I still think it's I still think it's
you
a
were
pretty
an
solid
80
movie.
before this podcast.
Yes.
Wow.
But I've gone down a little bit based on this conversation.
We live in different universes. Okay. I had the exact opposite. I don't know. Where are you right now, Phil? Because what's your number?
I'm at like a 79.
Okay. Can
I just say that is the most Phil thing in the world, that he says this chat has just made it go down in my estimations by 1%.
I'm very specific about my numbers.
As you should be. You should be. That's the most relatable thing you've ever said. But I feel the exact opposite. I had the exact opposite like life experience because I said this to you before I watched the movie, which was essentially I remember seeing this film a bunch of times and not even thinking it was that good as a kid. Thinking it didn't deliver what I wanted as a kid. I wouldn't put it higher than a 65. So I'm going to put it at a 65 when I was a kid in 1989. Before this podcast, I really loved it, and I gave it a 75, which I thought was really high. And then after this conversation, I'm going to go up to like an 83. But my 83 is that's a stupidly high number for this movie, and I want that to be on the box for the 35-year re-release. Is a stupidly good movie, considering it's a movie about Nintendo. Kenny and I have our podcast like a 1989 Patreon. But you did an amazing job talking this film up, Tom. So what's your
where are you at, Tom?
Like I said, I saw this film in probably 91, and I haven't seen it since then, up until last night. Mm-hmm. So in my head, from before, all I had was Power Glove, dinosaurs, and the feel. I always had the kind of hazy, almost sepia, golden hour look that it had. Mm-hmm. And that, in my mind, is perfection. And in my mind, before, it was, I can't fault it. So that, for those 3 moments, 100%. There was nothing in my head because that's all I had. I had Power Glove, Jenny Lewis being amazing, and sepia dinosaurs.
Sure.
Then watching it again, it's not 100%. But it's high. It really, really, really surprised me how much I enjoyed this film. And I'm going to give it a Philoscope 79 or maybe an 80 from watching it. And after this conversation, I feel vindicated, so I'm going to go up to an 85. I mean,
we're all in the same.
I loved this film so much.
We are in the same general neighborhood, and I almost feel like our scores do not reflect how much we want people to give this film a shot.
I want to say that
because it really surprised me. Sorry, Phil. Sorry.
No, please.
It really
surprised me too.
How I did expect to approach it and it to be one of those arsehole films that Kenny mentioned earlier, where it's purely 80s nostalgia. Oh my God, fucking Power Glove, mate. But I didn't have that for a single second through the film.
I have to say, and I think I agree with Kenny that our scores don't necessarily convey this, but like the joy that this film brought me, like this, it has no business being as good as it is.
No, I think I should go higher because I think I might go higher because I'm
now thinking I'm going to push 90, to be honest.
I'm thinking about it in terms of the other film that I feel falls into this well a little bit, and that's Weekend at Bernie's, which we watched recently and we both loved, but I do feel like we were laughing at Weekend at Bernie's a little bit, where I don't like Weekend at Bernie's is absolutely a wonderful viewing experience. Please go watch it. You won't regret it, but you certainly won't walk away saying, well, this is really an interesting commentary on America's, the way America approaches mental illness, among the youth, and the way capitalism has been stripping, our underclass of their, countercultural touchstones. So, which I think Tom said, and I think it's valid. The crazier part is that it's valid. And the movie,
that's what's insane.
So it's undergirded by that, but the surface level is so wonderful too. And like we didn't really talk even that much about Fred Savage, who is, boy, is that a leading man's performance right there too.
Joyful.
He's amazing.
Charismatic. He's a little Michael J. Fox. I mean that in the best possible way. Yep. And I think I do have to go a little higher. I'm going to go up to an 88. That really is some rarefied air.
Wow.
I can't believe it, but I do want this to convey. You will be shocked by how much you like this film.
I'm going to go up as well. I'm going to go up to an 82. I feel like I need to get into the 80s with this. I really do think that part of it, or my original grade, probably comes down to a little bit of shame of being like, why did this movie make me cry as much as it did, and why did I care as much as I did? But yeah, it's a good movie, guys. Let's get that Rotten Tomatoes score up.
Yeah, I was questioning whether, because I'm not ashamed to say I wept at the end, and I was wondering whether it's because I'm halfway through 2-week quarantine in Toronto, 3,000 miles away from my son, who I'm not going to see for weeks. But then I realized, no, fuck him. It's because of Fred Savage.
Well, I just want to... Tom texted me after watching the film yesterday, and his text was, oh God, I wept. I don't even care. And I think that's fair.
It's
a really surprisingly powerful.
I love that your son cried at it. I love that. Again,
he is a tough kid who, insists upon watching R-rated movies. His name is Rollins, and he says, rated R means rated R for Rollins. And we turned around and the kid's welling up. We couldn't believe it. Now, I mean, of course, he's a sensitive soul, but like
he's a softie like his dad.
And my daughter, I'm a sensitive soul, but my daughter gave him a hug, and it was a great family moment. So
it's great. Yeah, it's a shame that a twin had to die.
It really made them appreciate what they've got.
Yeah.
Then he went right back to Fortnite.
Are you anticipating? Go on.
Go ahead. Tom.
Are you anticipating any other film from 1989 that in your conversation you'll reference Lynch, Hitchcock, and westerns of the John Ford ilk?
Let me look at the list.
I don't know, man. I don't think so.
Did you email me that list, Phil, or did you?
Yeah, I can. I'll send it to you right now. But it's. I don't know that we have an 89 movie that fits that bill, Tom.
So now, if you're looking at your list, you said there was an initial list of 25 movies from 1989, and this wasn't one of them, and this was one of the expansion films?
Yeah, I just sent the list to you, Kenny.
Where would it be now?
I mean, this movie would definitely. Would it
make our top 25?
I don't know if it. I don't know if it make my top 25.
Look, Tom, this year's incredible. Like this year's mind-boggling. That's why we did it. But no, Tom was on the original list. Oh no, the list is long. Okay.
I mean, you have to remember, Tom, that like from this is a year where you've got Batman, Dead Poets Society, Say Anything, Do the Right Thing, The Abyss. I mean, Drugstore Cowboy, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, When Harry Met Sally, Last Crusade. Like it's a shocking year. Yeah, so it's tough to say, like, you know.
But to your point, Tom, the closest would be Bill and Ted's.
Bill and Ted's.
Yeah, I think that Bill and Ted's is the only movie that's like this. But the thing about Bill and Ted's Bill and Ted's is overtly trying to get you. You know, you go in there thinking it's going to be a dumb stoner movie, and it's overtly trying to get you to think about, you know, more nuanced, subtle inspirations and ideas about, you know, fate and history and all that stuff. This movie is subtle. This movie is really
who'd have thunk it?
Really washes over you.
It's an amazing thing.
I could have talked about it for another 2 hours.
I can't thank you enough, Tom, for coming back on to talk about The Wizard with us.
It's a pleasure. It's been such joy.
It's a joyful movie. It tapped into something that I didn't know. I didn't know I was missing.
Phil, I knew you were missing it.
That's fair. I have to go watch Pushing Tin now, which we're doing tomorrow. You ever see Pushing Tin, Tom? You ever see that movie?
I've seen Pushing Tin.
What are your thoughts on Pushing Tin, just out of curiosity?
Fine film. Oh, actually, I also said to you yesterday that earlier in the evening, I watched the most recent episode, which is the penultimate episode of Mayor of Easttown. And I made a joke to you that it's a perfect double bill. It is.
It's a perfect chaser.
They're saying very, very similar things.
Certainly about America.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Tom. Thank you so much.
But I look forward to it. Phil, enjoy Pushing Tin if you can.
Oh, little preview into Kenny's thoughts on Pushing Tin. Just a little window into.
I'll give you my little window into Pushing Tin. Pushing Tin would have been an amazing movie if it was made in 1989. In 1989, they would have known what to do with this premise, and in 1999, some really bad impulses took over.
Oh, I don't.
Became a very. It's not a weird movie. I think it's just a lot of choices that I don't agree with.
I'm very curious to watch it again. I haven't seen it since '99. Just excited to talk about that cast, and maybe we should do our top 5 Kate Blanchetts, Kenny. I don't know if that's something you're interested in doing, but
top 5 Kate Blanchetts. Yeah, sure, I'm in.
All right, Tom. Thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Talk to you soon, man.
Bye, Tom. Always good to see you.
Podcast like it. You want a podcast like it? 1999.